finds out.
Lieutenant General Masaneh Kinteh, welcome to the checkpoint. First, we start with the July 22nd apology that your office wrote. Why was the need for that?
Well, thank you very much. I am pleased to have you at Defense Headquarters this afternoon. Let me take this opportunity on behalf of the members of the entire Gambia Armed Forces to welcome you to the Defense Headquarters. Well, we wrote a July 22nd apology shortly before the July 22nd of this year because we feel there is a need for us to make our position clear as members of the Gambia Armed Forces. The July 22nd, what was dubbed as the July 22nd Revolution, was a military affair. And in the days leading to the July 22nd of this year, we had reports or information that a political party in this country, was supposed to celebrate July 22nd, as some sort of a political party activity. And we thought the time was not ripe for it, and there was a need for us to make, it very clear that the July 22nd is not a political activity per se. It is a military, revolution that was undertaken in July 1994, and we apologize for that, because I think it was a day that the military crossed the boundary that it was not supposed to have been crossed, in the first place. I think the July 22nd revolution, has failed the promises that it was set to, bring to the people of this country. I think the July 22nd revolution has also set back the development process of this country. And it is as a result of the July 22nd revolution that we are where we are today as a country, still grappling, with us, very, very key challenges of our times.
But you've defended the revolution for so many years. Why were you defending the revolution?
Well, we were part of the government that was constituted. We didn't defend the revolution. We are part of the government that was constituted, and we had a role to play in that government. What we were doing at the time was to see how best we can serve the Gambia Armed Forces, to see how best we can put back the Gambia Armed Forces on track of professionalism, of military orientation, and design programs that is going to keep the military where it belongs, not to transgress into political domain. That's what we were doing.
Okay, but the statement was very powerful. I quote, you said the Gambia Armed Forces wishes to disassociate itself with July 22nd, the part of which has subsequently brought untold terror and mayhem to Gambians. A system that brought untold mayhem and terror to Gambians.
Yes.
And you were one time CDS to that system.
Absolutely.
How do you reconcile that?
Well, I can tell you the fallbacks or the shortfalls of the July 22nd revolution are on record for everybody to see.
So would you?
I was not a party to that, and I've never subscribed to even the ideology that military should intervene in politics in the first place.
You were a professional.
I was a professional, and I am a professional, and I will remain a professional.
So do you regret working with the past government?
No, I do not regret working with the past government. I did not regret working with the past government because I was working for the interest of the Gambian people. I was working in an institution where I think I have the requisite knowledge and skills to be able to make a change. And during my time as the Chief of Defense Staff of the Gambia Armed Forces, I was able to initiate programs that were able to put the armed forces back on track.
Example?
Example such as the reforms that we have conducted, in ensuring that the armed forces understands its role as to, an institution that is supposed to be subservient to the civil authority, and at the same time a key player in national development. It was during that time that we were able to construct, projects like the Mayok Secondary, and the Farawa project. So those were days that the armed forces was very much into national development, and we had undertaken, a lot of developmental activities within the country and even outside while we serve in peacekeeping missions around the world.
Okay, good. We'll come to the reforms, but before we go to that, we look at the role of the Gambia Armed Forces during the recent political crisis. Yes. I know you were outside of the country at the time.
That's true.
What is your assessment? Did they play their role the way they should do?
Well, the armed forces played a very, very pivotal role in ensuring that the peace and stability of this country was not compromised. Some elements of the armed forces, behave in a way that was showing open support, for the outgoing government, even at a point when the people of this country decided otherwise. I think that was a wrong move, but this was just by some very few elements of the members of the armed forces.
If you were in charge at that moment, what would you have done differently?
What I would have done differently, probably I would stay as a professional soldier, and I will always encourage my fellow officers and members of the Gambia Armed Forces that we have a role to play, that we have an obligation to ensure that the peace and stability of this country is not being compromised, to ensure that we stand by the Gambian people, to ensure that we are able to defend the verdict of the Gambian people. I have done that while out of this country. If I would have been even still serving in the military, that is exactly what was going to be my stand.
The role ECOMOG played during the political crisis was very pivotal.
Yes.
Is that an indictment on the armed forces that they didn't play their role the way they should? That's why foreign forces have to come in.
Now, it's not that it's an indictment on the Gambia Armed Forces. It's not that the Gambia Armed Forces, failed to play their role. Well, as a country, we are going through difficult times, all right? And Gambia is not an island. It's part of the ECOWAS sub-region. If anybody who knows about the Africa Peace and Security Architecture, that was a crisis prevention mechanism constituted at the level of the African Union in ensuring that the regional organizations are able to proactively, intervene in situations where they could smell, conflict, was pretty much in line with that doctrine. ECOWAS did not just come to the Gambia because they think, they have a small country that is, causing some trouble that they are coming. No. ECOWAS, they came to the Gambia as part of the crisis prevention mechanism that was in place at the time through the ECOWAS standby force, of which Gambia, is part and parcel. If this problem would have happened in other countries, Gambia would have certainly, taken a very, very active role in that. Okay. So it's not an indictment on the members of the Gambia Armed Forces. We have gone through a very, very difficult transition period. We have come very close to full-blown conflict in this country. We have seen people living in droves, vulnerable people, our citizens, our vulnerable groups, women and children. We are living in this country. The people are living in the urban area, move into the rural area. So those were not good signs. And if the situation would have left, entirely under the key players at the time, probably the situation would have been, different.
Let's look a bit about the history of the security forces of the Gambia.
Yes.
Security forces, I mean the armed forces, the field force, the police. Like 1980, there was a crisis when Commander Mahoney of the field force was assassinated by Officer Danso. Senegal has to intervene.
Yes.
1981, attempted coup. Senegal has to intervene. 1994, the army turned against its own government and overthrew the government. Yes. 2017, another crisis. Yes. Foreign forces have to intervene. For the fourth time in the short history of the Gambia, outside forces have intervened. What does that tell us about the level of our security setup?
Well, it tells us that there are challenges in terms of security sector governance and security sector involvement, into issues, especially political issues. Well, I always believe that the Gambia can build a professional armed forces. The Gambia can build an armed forces that is going to be free from partisan politics, that is going to be non-tribally inclined, that is professional and play its constitutional roles and mandate, and at the same time, play a pivotal role in national development. I always believe that is possible. If we pay attention to the needs of institutions as part of the reform process, I think we should be able to correct all those wrongs of the past. We have been given another opportunity again as a country and as a security institution to be able to design policies and programs that is going to transform the armed forces and bring it to the same level, if not at a higher pedestal, to the other armed forces that you have within the sub-region.
What is the role of ECOWAS currently in the Gambia?
The role of ECOMIC in the Gambia is to be able to provide the secure condition that is necessary for the government to continue to function. That is their key mandate, and that includes providing security to His Excellency the President and the government officials.
Do they have to consult you as the CDS before they take any action?
Of course, we are in close consultations. They have a mandate that was given to them by the authorities of the West African sub-region. They have a mandate to implement, but of course, we are also equally very, very important players in managing the security of the country. So we are in close consultations. I have liaison with the ECOMIC headquarters. I am in constant touch with the ECOMIC force commander and all the contingent commanders deployed in the country. So that collaboration and consultation is always there. And recently, you must have realized that we are conducting joint patrols with them, in ensuring that we are seen to be working for the same purpose, and that is to ensure that the peace and stability of this country is very much assured.
Good. Now we come to the reforms or proposed reforms in the army or the security forces in general. What are the key areas that you want to reform?
The key areas that I want to reform are many, but let me just, for the sake of time, I will limit it to only some few areas. I believe training is critical in developing our manpower, in developing our resource base, the human capital. We want to make sure that our men and women know what are their roles and functions and how to do their job better, smarter. Those are programs that we have started to unfold. Other areas that we are looking at is how do we enhance the capacity of the Gambia Armed Forces in ensuring that we can play a big role in terms of international peacekeeping missions.
You will come to peacekeeping later.
Yes, but I just want to mention it as part of one of the key pillars of our reform. Another area that we are also looking at is how do we ensure that the living condition of the ordinary soldier is improved. The pay and allowances of the soldiers are improved. How do we ensure that they have good shelter in their barracks? How do we ensure that they have adequate logistic support to be able to undertake their operational and administrative activities such as transportation, communication, and so on and so forth.
On that point, what do you say to critics who would say, being a small country, the Gambia spends heavily on security, especially on the armed forces? It probably doesn't even need an armed forces. What do you say to those people?
Well, the alternative to that is not to have an armed forces, and you cannot imagine to have Gambia as a sovereign country in this part of the world without a standing military. even if our role only stops at securing our border from the southern part, so that the rebellion that is in that part of the region does not cross over to the country. Even if our role stops at only that, I think it is something that is worth pursuing. Yes.
Okay. Now, confidence building. As you know, for the past 22 years, the military or the security forces have been accused of siding with the former regime, human rights violations and all those things. How do you intend to reverse that, to bring back confidence into the military? The Gambia Armed Forces, when it was the Gambia National Army, was seen as a very professional force.
Sure.
Yes. How do you bring back the glory, the lost glory?
Yes. It goes back to reforms. We need to reform the armed forces, and in those reforms, the soldiers' roles will be very clear to them, and the responsibility they have to the citizens of this country. When you talk about the relationship, the civil-military relationship, that needs to be improved. That is a two-way street. It's a relationship that has to be built based on trust and confidence. There is a lot of work that we have to do to be able to reach out to the civil populace, for them to understand that the armed forces is ready to serve their interests. It is also incumbent on each and every member of the Gambia Armed Forces and every authority that is charged with management of the armed forces to be able to promote good civil-military relations. Without a solid, good military-civil relations, the prospect for peace in this country would be very, very minimal. There should be a deliberate effort, not only on the side of the armed forces, but on the side of every player, not only the armed forces, but the entire security, spectrum of the country, and every player involved in that should ensure that a good relationship exists between the civil community and those serving in the security services.
Do you think it is a good idea to reinstate officers who were sacked?
Yes, I think it is a good idea once it is done in a controlled way, once it is done in a selective way. The officers and soldiers that we are reinstating into the armed forces, these are people who have been checked, their records have been checked, their background have been checked, and we are convinced that these are people who have been victimized on no strong grounds. And therefore, when the call came for a redress of the excesses of the past regime, we think, this is also an opportunity for us to look at the members of the armed forces, because, like I said, just like the reforms, every process of the government is a holistic approach. So we are only looking at our own side to see the soldiers and officers who have been victimized as a result of excessive executive, decisions of the past regime, to be reinstated back into the armed forces.
Yes.
Some
of them not involved in unconstitutional activities.
Some of them, it has been alleged that some of them have been involved in unconstitutional activities. There is no doubt about that. We have enlisted people who have, been accused in the past of taking in one, military, activity against the former government or the other. However, we think most of those people have paid the price for the crimes that they have committed. And most of those people have reformed. And these are, I'm telling you, these are not just ordinary members of the armed forces. These are some of the elites that we have in the armed forces. And it has gotten to a point when the armed forces was sort of depleted, in terms of its human resource base, as a result of all these coups and counter-coup allegations, some of which have not been adequately substantiated, or they have not been tried and tested, to ensure that the allegations, were right. So, bearing that in mind, we think there is a need for us to relook at the whole process. We look at all those people who have been fallen victim of those kind of circumstances, to look into their individual cases. And this has been done not by me as an individual, but it's been done by boards that we have constituted in the armed forces, consisting of people with very high degree of integrity, and they were able to do the due diligence to be able to ensure that these people can still be useful members of the armed forces. So they have something to bring back into the armed forces. That is why we are taking them, and it is helping in the reforms, because these are some of the most experienced people that we have in the armed forces.
People who were wrongly victimized in the past have been redressed. What about people who were overly rewarded in the past? What do you do with them? Like mass promotions. Some people were just promoted from lieutenant to major or to captain or to general.
Yes, what we are doing now is to be able to ensure that the people who have been promoted beyond what is their capacity are adequately prepared to be able to assume their functions in the new structure and the new dispensation. I know this is a tall order, because some people have been promoted, way above, what their capabilities are.
Does that mean you're going to demote them? Or?
No, we're not going to demote. There are no plans for demoting anybody. There are no plans for dismissing anybody. What we are trying to do is to be able to reform the system and to be able to look at the promotion critically. All right, the promotions in the armed forces are clearly spelled out in our books, how they are supposed to be done. In addition to what we have in our books, we are also coming up with some guidelines that is going to stipulate criteria for promotion. I believe that, promotion, yes, in as much as everybody wants to be promoted, if you are promoted, you feel very excited, your family feels good, and friends. But again, beyond that, I think every promotion also comes with responsibility, because they say, to whom much is given, much is expected. If you are given a particular rank, it means you have a corresponding challenge in the system. So we are doing a system overhaul just to look at our structure. Where do we have vacancies existing, critical places that need to be manned? Do we have the adequate ranks for those places? If yes, then we fill them. If no, how do we prepare that capacity to be able to fill those vacancies? And let me tell you, the armed forces over the years has not been moving the way it is supposed to move, and that is why, as part of our reforms also, we are now trying to expand the armed forces, corresponding to the size, corresponding, of course, to to the threat assessment that we have, and how the armed forces should be commanded, and what is there to facilitate control of the forces. So we are looking at that, and that is why we have created some new units around the country. Basse is now having a battalion of its own. We also now have a battalion that is stationed in Kanilai. So these are new units established, and we are just trying to put the basic logistics in place for them to be fully functional. So there is a lot of work, a lot of job to be done in the armed forces.
There was this rumor going on, and probably still going on, that the armed forces plans to or has already sacked hundreds of people. Is that true?
No, it is not true. We have not sacked people. All right, we are undergoing reform. When people hear about reform, especially security sector reform, the thing that people think about is massive, retrenchment of personnel. I think this is a very, very wrong perception. There are so many things to reform than just, retrenching people.
Is there a possibility for that?
Of course, it all depends on, what the facts are there, what the facts support. Everything is open. What I want to draw people's attention to is the fact that we are not downsizing the armed forces. We are going to right-size the armed forces. We are going to look at the armed forces from its roles and responsibilities, from our threat assessment, because you constitute the armed forces for a purpose. It is based on that we are going to establish the units and the various organizations in the armed forces, and that is going to also inform the size of the armed forces. What sort of rank structure, what sort of specializations that we can have in the armed forces. So what we are doing is, of course, there is going to be a lot of internal adjustment and movement around, but we have not seen anything pointing towards retrenching people in great numbers from the armed forces.
The army in the past was very political. How do you intend to change that?
Excellent question. The army in the past has been very political, and it's because of that political inclination in the armed forces we had all these issues with coups and allegations of coups and counter coups and so on and so forth. You see, if you want to have a professional armed forces, you don't only have to remove the military from politics, but you also have to remove politics from the military. The soldier is a citizen. He has got his rights, he has got his entitlements. Like any other citizen, we could go to the polls and vote. But what you don't want is to have a political campaign mounted in a military barracks. A partisan politics in the military destroys the professional fabric of the armed service. So what we intend to do is to go back to the drawing board and re-educate our soldiers. They need to know that not if you are wearing the uniform and you owe allegiance to your country and you have taken the supreme sacrifice to be able to put your life on the line for the survival of the people of your country, then you will not be able to take sides openly. We are not only going to deal with the problem of politics in the armed forces, we are going to deal with the problem of tribalism also
in the armed forces.
We want to make sure that we transform the armed forces in a way that is going to be non-partisan, it will be non-tribal, it will be professional, and more importantly, it is going to be accountable to a democratic civil control and administration.
To achieve that goal, wouldn't it be necessary to have a defense minister?
Well, it is not for me to suggest whether we have a defense minister or not. What I can say is that if you're managing security, it's managed at various levels. What are these levels? You have the ground level, the tactical level, we call it. You have the operational level, that is another level higher than the ground level, where you have commanders and service chiefs. But of course, you also have the strategic level and even the grand strategic level. All right. The way the security management, is done at all these levels, is important to the professionalization.
So having no
level of the armed forces as an institution.
We come to one of the strongest points of the Gambia armed forces: peacekeeping. What made you so distinguishable in peacekeeping?
Well, thank you very much. I think that is also a very important question. Peacekeeping, we have been doing very well, and we continue to do very well in that arena. The reason behind that is attributable to the sort of character you have in the Gambian soldier. once the Gambian soldier is exposed and challenged, he rises up to the occasion, without doubt. Peacekeeping, I see it as a way of moving these armed forces forward. Why? Because before soldiers are deployed on peacekeeping, they do a lot of training. It raises their professional standards. It raises their skill levels before they deploy. If they deploy out in the field, they continue to operate under very, very good conditions, and their interaction with their counterparts, also, positions them in a way to be able to learn from their peers. And when they return back as better soldiers,
okay.
and better people, having exposed to those conditions. But also they come back a little richer,
than before.
than before they deploy. So it is one area that I highlighted in my reform, and I think it's one area that we need to work very hard to be able to achieve, to change the armed forces.
We must end it on that note. Thank you very much, Lieutenant General Masaneh Kinteh,
Thank you very much
for being on the checkpoint.
Thank you
very much.